The Purge, 2013. First thing I noticed about this, I saw it again for the first time for many years. It's a 12-year-old film. I saw it in the cinema when it was released, but decided to watch it on streaming and noticed that it only has a score of 41 on Rotten Tomatoes. There's a splat, and 36, even lower, on IMDb, with the popcorn spilled over. That's the symbol they seem to use. So, what's happening? At the time I saw it, I'm sure I gave it a relatively good review. I'm not going to look at what I wrote first. I may come back to that at a future point if I do a Cali Seconds in which I talk about the film with spoilers and everything. But now I'm just going to give it the sort of standard streamed review that I've been doing lately, explaining what the synopsis is about, which is that it's America reborn as a nation. Unemployment is 1%. There's a catch. Crime is at an all-time low. Well, again, there's a bit of a catch. The main thing is that there's one night every year on the 21st of March, or the spring equinox, since the year 2017. And that's interesting. I mean, this film was in 2013. And I wonder how they came up with, I mean, it actually fits in with the election cycle. They already had a dystopian idea of what might happen after the next election, looking at it from the point of view of 2012, 2013, 20, maybe slightly earlier, whenever they came up with this idea. And that, I mean, looking back from the perspective of 2025, it's fascinating, but the current situation is almost, in some ways, more terrifying. Some ways, maybe not. I mean, there isn't an annual purge, but there's a lot of marginalisation. There's a lot of awful stuff happening in the USA. There's enough awful stuff happening in the UK and in other countries. However, going back to the start of this film, we get CCTV footage from the 21st of March, 2017, 2018, 2019, and it looks a bit like the scenes from the London riots in 2011, those sort of scenes, but perhaps even worse, just despicable violence, really, people ganging up on individuals and dispatching them, just outright beating them up and killing them sadistically, just treating them in an inhuman way. And that is the whole point. It's a one night rampage from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And they called it a lockdown. And that was interesting because lockdown has become a very popular term since 2020 with the coronavirus lockdowns. But we did talk about occasionally, some situation. I remember it's on the news when, say, a major crisis and major incident had occurred and a town had gone into lockdown because the police were trying to catch whoever had caused a major problem or wanted to make sure that residents weren't leaving their homes when there was, say, a major fire and toxins in the air, and people were asked to close windows and stay at home, don't go outside. Always, when there's a situation of a lockdown, One of the first thoughts I've had is, what about the people who don't have a home? I remember thinking about that when this the Purge first came out. What happens to unhoused people? They haven't got anywhere to go. And in 2020, I know in the UK, hotels were opened up, and there was a fairly valiant effort to get a lot of people. I don't think they managed to succeed in getting everyone off the streets, but they really tried. The authorities actually did a lot to try and make sure that even the least fortunate members of society, many of them had somewhere to be safe in, rather than being stuck on the streets. And the streets became a scary place. You'd go out in the middle of the day during the lockdown. I remember Easter 2020, the air was so clear, but the streets were so quiet. If you ever went out late on, it really felt intimidating because there was no one about. Going out in the middle of the day, there were people about walking, just kept our distance. In the UK, we were allowed to do that. You're allowed an hour's exercise. I really appreciated that. I had a treadmill at home as well. But getting back to this, 2013, looking at the situation in 2017 through to 2022, which is the year that this particular film is set in. So 5 years of The Purge, and everyone is, making sure they'd, left work and gone home, and everyone with shutters installed in their homes would be lowering them to make sure that after they've had their evening meal, they're locking down as completely as is possible. All the shutters down, they're as safe as houses. Of course, no guarantee that there is safety. I mean, um, there's a lot of news bulletins that explain the rules of the purge and the I mean, I don't know what class 4 weapons are, whether that's actually uh, a real thing in the USA, but um, up to class 4 weapons were allowed to be used. How they policed, if anyone was using class 5, class 6, I don't know, semi-automatic, or perhaps, I don't know, really serious weaponry, I don't know. Another thing that's mentioned is that government employers government employees, certainly above rank 10, I think that's what they said, were immune. Now, how do they police that as well? I mean, are all these people stashed somewhere securely? They're somewhere where they're in extra fortified places where they're looked after during these 12-hour purge fests. I had an awful lot of questions. I already had a lot of questions in 2013. Now I've got even more because I thought about it even more. Of course, now the perspective has changed as well because, given on the first few months of President 47 and the Doge purge, sorry for using that word, but the um, removal of many government employees, the vilifying of many government employees, the removal of the sort of reframing of people as DEI hires when many of them, I've followed many of their accounts, people who seemed decorated people, you know, um, people of color who've worked in the military, um, queer employees, marginalized people who have done exceptionally well, but are now considered DEI and relieved of their jobs, let go as such, in the most horrendous way. So, how the situation of the purge plays out now, and if it was set in 2025, as 2025 has actually been realised, could be very different. So there's so much. But getting back to the film, Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey play a mother and father with two children. Now, they're James and Mary Sandin, and their kids are um, Sa- Sally, I think. Oh, I can't remember the name of the kids, but anyway, Charlie, maybe. But a slightly older daughter and a slightly younger son. The son's into tech stuff, like he's got this burnt out, it's a half burnt out doll. The face has broken, but it's got a camera, and it's almost like the equivalent of drones now, if it had been done now. But it's a remote control. Um, Motorized vehicle that, tiny, that goes around their house and gets used quite a bit in this film without explaining too much about what goes on as the film develops. But then there's a slightly older teenage daughter who has a boyfriend. Now she, I think, will be 16 or 17 years old, and she's going out with a lad whom, from the conversation, seems to be 18 and a bit too old for her as far as the parents are concerned. So they're not happy. But anyway, he's in the bedroom with her, but then the lockdown happens, so she says goodbye, and he heads home. Except he doesn't. He sneaks back inside and surprises her, and um, they make out after the lockdown started, and no one else is the wiser in the family. Don't know. They didn't put any movement detectors, I guess, which I thought would be one of the other things you'd want to do, as well as putting shutters if you want to help guarantee things. I guess lots of CCTV. They should have some CCTV. So you see a lot of the news, you know, playing out as uh, the purge starts taking effect. People getting beat on the street, and the television broadcast is salacious. The way they report it in, it's not exactly objective. It's taking a delight in the fact that people are being beaten up and killed, and that, especially now, hits me hard because it's marginalized group. It's people of color. It's, it's black people. It's Asian people. It's Hispanics. Latinx people, Latin people. Um, they they'll be picked on um, much more. Some disenfranchised white people will be picked on as well, and taken out. And one of the there's some background stuff happening on the news saying, oh well, it obviously is about privilege. Absolutely right. It's privilege writ large. Um, Anyone who's got enough money to have a huge house and all this security, like this Sandin family, of course, they're relatively safe. All of these families, they've put out some blue flowers on their porch to indicate to the world at large outside that they support the purge. Um, and there's people, the commentators are talking about how, on the broadcast media saying how it's unburdening the economy and crime is down apart from this one night when, of course, crime doesn't really count because it isn't. It's all legal. It's decriminalized. Murder. That's mentioned. Um, but they do rely on this compliance. How it's policed, I do not know. Um, now, you also one other factor I think is you'd be on your own if there was a medical emergency. What happens if someone has a health emergency and it's right, it's after 7 p.m. and the purge is on? You wouldn't be able to get to the hospital, to A&E or emergency room to get help. There wouldn't be any um, ambulances, any first responders, fire services. If there's a fire, there's a police. If you any type of thing, you wouldn't be able to get any help. Um, now, um, there's a homeless guy outside, covered in. He's been beaten up already, and uh, the youngest, the son and the family, he he's been asking his family questions about, "Oh, why aren't you participating?" He's asking his mum and dad, "Why aren't you going out killing people?" And it's like, "Oh, well, we support it completely, but we don't feel the need." But he's got a bit more compassion and empathy, and when he sees this chap running out in the residential street pleading for help, he takes sympathy and he disarms the alarms and lets him come in, manages to let him come in before um, uh, the father closes the system again. Of course, that means there's someone else in the household. It turns out there's two people because, of course, there's the boyfriend, teenage boyfriend. So there's all these things, and they all come to a head at one point very early on in the film, and then other things start happening. I mean, and I won't go into too much of this because this is the nub of the film, but there's like people. I mean, there's neighbours, but there's also people roaming around on the purge, and they're chasing after people. They've obviously been chasing after this man who has managed to get in, and they're acting. This bunch of purgers, they act, I feel, and you can see it in the trailer, they act like the Manson tribe. I mean, they're, they're kind of all playful in some respects. I mean, out of the films I've seen about the Manson situation. I've seen perhaps two major films, significant films. One was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is inaccurate and reimagines the situation in a rather a way that's been criticised a lot. And I might go into that in a future review of that at some point. But um, I saw another film, and it was horrifying. And I mean, like the young women, they're sort of like playful girls, but with sadistic intent. Um, and the men they're with, similarly, I mean, oh gosh, it's just a horrendous situation. They've got one level, there's this almost like respectability. There's like some of them are wearing ties, and they're all the way they talk is all mm, American version of received pronunciation and la di da. And oh gosh, I mean, watching this film again, it really opened my eyes, and I thought, wow. Um, and I remember seeing it the first time because I talked to a neighbour in the cinema saying about how it was, it was all down to privilege. I mean, we both agreed on that at that point, and with the commentary that comes up. But I mean, in this scenario, it all comes to a head. It's sort of uh, a choice between surrender or sacrifice. And the way the homeless people are dehumanized, the language is horrific. It's so dispiriting. It is just dehumanizing anyone. I mean, every marginalized group, LGBTQIA plus people, the disabled, anyone, or just about anyone who at the moment is now a bit on the edge because the way things are going in society. Um, it's like full on in this film. It's absolutely horrifying, dystopian stuff. So I was surprised. I didn't realize how much you could actually predict that from 2013. I thought it was almost like, in some ways, the scenario depicted in this film is too obvious. The way Project 2025 has manifest is more subtle, and yet it's still, in a way, becoming, well, it's equally horrifying, I would say, but it's just done in very different ways. So, um, the characters in this film, I thought great acting, the different levels of compassion, the conflict, the 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 dilemmas that arise. I think there's a lot that comes out in this film, and I thought and still think it's groundbreaking. So I wouldn't score it as low as Tomatometer, Rotten Tomatoes, and um, IMDb. I would score this 7 out of 10. It's the kind of horror film that I can enjoy as much as horrifying as it is. I think it is really, it's good to know about, and it's not too. It is a bit. There's a bit of gore, but not much. It's all very brief, and it's more about um, the idea of the terror, which is conveyed very strongly, and so I think it's at least 7 out of 10. So I'd love to know what you think about this film review. Um, Thanks for watching. Please like if you like this review. Please hit that notification button. Thanks for subscribing if you do. I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.